to the Flickcast, the podcast about movies, TV, pop culture, and pretty much anything else. I am Chris Ulrich, and with me, of course, Joe Dilworth. Joe, how's it going, buddy?
It's going much better. I can see sky now.
Oh, that's good. What's that song? I can see.
Yeah.
No, I won't sing. Sorry,
it'll be old hat by the time this airs, but
well, that's true.
It's a beautiful thing. Clear blue sky is something that maybe we take for granted all too often, and we got a quick lesson in Oregon about how to appreciate that, and I have a new appreciation for it. So
well, I'm glad it's clearing up for you, and it's I can't imagine what that must be like to have to deal with that kind of stuff. It's just on top of everything else, you also can't breathe or anything.
It's funny because I was having a discussion. I've had this discussion with a few people over the last couple months, especially, and it's sort of one of those things where I think by itself in any other year it would be more traumatic. Maybe I'm just numb at this point because I feel like if it was like
what else cares?
I mean, I kind of feel like if aliens landed tomorrow, we'd all be kind of like, yeah, of course, all right.
Of course, or murder hornets, or what was that? They found mummies, then they cursed mummies in Egypt or some shit.
Oh, look, Sasquatch is real. Yeah, of course he is. It's like
actually okay. That'd be cool. Yeah. That'd be cool. Or Loch Ness, right? Nessie?
Yeah, it's like, well, all this stuff is just going to happen this year. Okay, so
exactly.
How are you, sir? I feel like the last few shows you always ask me how I'm doing. I ramble on, and then we get into the show, and so I want to ask. Genuinely, how are you doing?
I'm okay. I had my son's birthday the day before we recorded this, and so that was a long day. We had a nice sort of drive-by party for him, so I was pretty tired after that. And then today I finally took a nap, so that was pretty exciting. It's a great day when you get time for a nap. And I was very happy to sleep for an hour today, almost an hour. I know, amazing.
I am jealous.
Carved out that little me time.
Yeah, there you go.
It was pretty exciting. But you know what? I was really happy to do this today because we had a really good guest on the show, and I should say we had him because sometimes we record the guest first and then we do the intro, which is what we're doing now. So it's kind of like weird backwards way. But through the magic of editing, it won't matter.
We will have a guest. Yes.
We will have a guest. So our guest on the show today is Jason Inman. He's a comic book writer, and he wrote a book. He's done so much stuff. And he used to host the DC All Access YouTube channel, and he's got a podcast called Geek History Lesson, which is a really cool show. They take one character from geekdom and discuss their history and their whole life. It's pretty cool. But his newest comic, Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, is available for pre-order, and he's got Jupiter Jet, the first version of that comic, or the first issue, I should say, of that comic. That's already available. Yes. You can buy that, and you should buy that. So we're happy to have Jason Inman on the show.
Yes, you should definitely buy Volume 1. You should pre-order Volume 2 because, as you'll hear in the interview, there is more planned, and who doesn't like a complete story, right? So definitely get out there and support him.
And before we throw it to him, we should just say, support the Flickcast on Patreon.
Yes,
there you go.
You didn't have to be so quiet about it. You'll get over it someday.
I'm over it. It's fine. Support the Flickcast on Patreon if you feel like it.
Yes, please do.
How's that? Okay, here's Jason Inman.
Where are you guys right now, by the way?
I'm in Austin now. I moved to Austin. I left LA.
Oh wow.
And I'm out in Portland, Oregon. So.
Oh, how are you?
Good. Now that we can see sky again, that's very nice, and sounds like we aren't going to burn down anymore. So
that's good.
Much better than we were a few days ago.
Yeah, I was very happy on Friday in LA that you could finally see blue sky again, and I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday was like I just spent as much time outside as I could, opened up the house, and really didn't do much other than just stare at the blue strangeness in the sky. But
totally understand that.
Yeah, no, it was very nice.
Yeah, it's weird living in Austin because I always heard it was it was hot and everything. Texas gets hot, but we don't have we haven't had earthquakes or wildfires, or the only thing we have to worry about sometimes apparently is tornadoes, but they don't really come that close to us.
That's good.
So
as a person,
it's not that bad.
As a person who grew up in Kansas, the advantage you have with tornadoes though is which direction they're going. You can get out of the way.
That's right. Well, that's interesting.
True.
'Cause I was going to ask you about growing up in Kansas, and if you so that's good. That's a good segue. I like that. So you grew up in Kansas. How was that? You learned a lot about tornadoes. It sounds like.
Yeah. It was okay. A lot of times I feel like because I grew up in very poor, very rural, agricultural Kansas. I kind of feel like I actually grew up in the 1970s instead of the late 1980s and 1990s, which I think might have benefited me in the long run because the internet or cable TV was really not a part of my life at all until I was an adult.
So how did you get to find your love of comics and all that stuff? Did you have to go to a comic shop in town, or was it like the spinner rack that you found in the grocery store? How did that work?
It was a spinner rack in a grocery store, and also at that time there was a rack in a Walmart's. Like they kind of disappeared like right when I became a teenager, but like I literally bought my first comic book at a Walmart.
So that's what started it for you.
Yeah.
I hate to kind of be like, the old man, although I am kind of this podcast, but I think there's something special and unique having discovered comics for the first time on spinner racks as opposed to, full-on comic book stores. I mean, because that was kind of like the dream, right, when we were kids, is that there would be a store that was nothing but comic books, and there wasn't when I was a kid. It was, hitting the drugstore and stuff like that. But the first time I went into a comic book store when they first came around was kind of magical. So
there was a comic book store. It was called Asylum Comics, and it was about 45 miles away. And it was in this town that we would go to only on like special occasions or whatever. And I remember having to convince my mother to let us stop there because it was, I mean, as a kid, I loved it, but I now realize that it was one of those nothing but long boxes, dust everywhere.
Yes.
Who knows what the hell was in the back room kind of shops. But I loved it as a kid. And my mother was always like, do we have to?
Some creature living in the back room somewhere.
Yeah, who knows what kind of dust
weird
you were
droppings
breathing or anything like that. Yeah.
Well, that was the thing that got it going for you. And then I've done I don't like to do a lot of prep for interviews. I know that makes me sound unprofessional, but I like to sort of let things evolve. That's the way Joe and I like to do it.
Yeah.
And it's more of like a conversation about you and your life and how things evolved for you. So you went from Kansas straight into the military, or was there like a detour somewhere, or how did it work?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. I joined the Army National Guard when I was in high school. So I joined when I was 17. So I actually had to have my parents sign the permission slip, because I took the recruiters, whole pitch, hook, line, and sinker, and, travel the world. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And, I went to University of Tulsa, while I did that. And then I got deployed to Iraq in the middle of my college.
Right. And then you were reading comic books then, too.
I kind of
when you had time. I'm obviously you're busy.
Yeah, well, I kind of fell out of it towards the end of high school and the beginning of college, and then it was going to Iraq that sort of like brought it back because we would get care packages over there, and inside one of the care packages was a couple of comic books, and one of them was Ultimate X-Men.
Ah, yes.
And I knew the X-Men, but I didn't know Ultimate X-Men, and I remember reading that being like, what the hell is this? Wolverine has a soul patch and Nightcrawler is an assassin? I need more of this. I need to read more of this.
Is that when they started having Nick Fury look like Samuel Jackson in the
That
Ultimates,
is,
right?
yeah.
Okay, good. That's what I thought. That's weird. So you're getting some care packages. Did you ever get the popcorn? Because I know that they send popcorn to people. And,
no, I never got popcorn. I get weird kind. I always get powder, lots of powder.
Powder.
Like, sweaty feet kind of thing like that.
Oh, sweaty feet. Sure. Well, because it was hot there. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So you spent some time there, and then the idea started forming. Hey, I'd like to do this for a living, or how did it start for you?
Honestly, I think it honestly the moment where it kind of came for me was I was in high school and I can remember watching the movie Gladiator in 2000, and the credits rolled, and I really enjoyed the movie, and the credits rolled, and it was like the first time in my life I can remember thinking, oh wow, people are paid to make this. That's very impressive. But it took me several years after that to get up the courage to be like, it only really happens mainly in LA or New York or places like that. And if I don't move out there, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. And I moved out there 10 years ago, and I've been here ever since.
And it seems to be going well. Yeah, I had the same experience, although since I'm much older than you are, it was Star Wars for me, the original, in the theater.
Nice.
So I was like, wait, this could be a job and whatever. Obviously, I didn't. Sadly, I guess not obvious, but sadly, I didn't reach that level of success. I didn't make Star Wars, or any of those things. But it was something
Not
that you
yet.
found. Not yet. That's true.
Right. There's always time, man.
There's always time. That's true. Thank you. I appreciate that. But it was just, you can actually do this for a living, and then so you start working and although I never really wanted to be in front of the camera, because you've been in front of the camera a lot too. You hosted the DC All Access show, and you've been on front of the camera a lot. Is that something you're interested in doing still, or not as much?
If the right opportunity comes along, yeah. But no, I never really wanted to be in front of the camera. I always did like improv and weird hosty stuff, and I only fell into that because they opened it up as a contest, and I kind of thought that I should do it. Actually, my girlfriend at the time, my wife, was the one that really convinced me to do it, because I was kind of like, I didn't think there was any chance in hell that I would win it. And my wife was like, you really need to do this, and then you need to put your little cherry on top saying that you live in Los Angeles, and that'll be easy for the production. And I did put that in the video, and I think that sealed the deal.
And
There
I
you
can work
go.
local, so you have to fly me anywhere.
It's like
nice.
I'm literally 6 miles away from your offices, so I think we could do this.
I could be there in like 10 minutes. You guys want me to come? I'll be there.
Yeah, really.
So the first year, that did actually happen a lot, because I actually wasn't working a full-time job, and so they would call me. We always had our like regular shoot days on Wednesdays. It was like every other Wednesday, and we would shoot every episode for the next 2 weeks over that on that Wednesday. And then every once in a while they would call me up on a Tuesday and be like, could you come here in an hour, because Adam Kubert just showed up to the DC offices and we'd love to do an interview with him because he's here. And nice. I would be like, yeah, sure,
I'll be there. Well, and your wife was smart. She knew that maybe she had a better sense of what you could do than you did. I'm curious, are you a kind of person who, like, I don't know what's the term they're using now, like not imposter syndrome, but do you feel confident like you should get in front of the camera, or was it something holding you back? And she's like, no, don't be stupid. You could totally do this because I believe in you, kind of thing.
A little bit of imposter syndrome. I think more it was the idea that I always think that who wants to see my stupid face, or do people actually think that I'm funny or entertaining or at least interesting? And I will say that has kind of changed now, because again, like the number of years that I was on DC, and then also the number of opportunities that happened after that or during that, kind of just upped my confidence quite a bit in that level. I was like, oh yeah, I can talk on camera. You give me a subject that I like, and I can talk till the cows come home now.
Well, did they give you, like, sort of for DC All Access, did they give you freedom to kind of do it the way you wanted, or was it, scripted? Was there things, you can't go in this area, we want you to promote this, that kind of thing?
They did. They always had scripts. They had copy written, but they always told me that I could change it if I wanted to. And as the series went on, I started like adding little stuff into it, or being like, I want to change that. I don't want to talk about that comic book. I don't want, because I was always afraid. I never wanted somebody to like play a clip like 10 years down the road and say, oh, you told me this comic was great, and it really isn't. And so I will say to any eagle-eyed listeners, I was very careful about, if I said that I loved a comic, it means that I really, really do. And if I just talked about the comic, it means that I was mixed on it. I would never say anything bad about it, but I would not say I loved it or I would recommend it.
Right, that's fair.
So I was very careful about that, because, but no, I in fact, it was during the second year of the show, I started catching mistakes that the copywriter would put into our script. And I'd be like, oh, that's not right. That's not the creator. That's not their title. That's not the character.
Nice. Excellent.
Nice. So you were helping them figure it out too. That's good. Well, your level of expertise obviously was growing at that time, or you'd had an expertise level because you've been reading for so long. So were you more of I know I'm sure you've answered this question lots of times, but are you more of a DC person, but you said the X-Men Ultimates was one of your first forays back into comics, so you still have a soft spot for Marvel too, or is it mostly DC?
It's mostly DC. DC.
Well, we're done. This interview's over.
No, that's not true.
I'm just joking.
I like Marvel a lot. I do have a lot of love for Marvel. I do love Daredevil quite a bit. And I love Iron Man, especially War Machine. Like James Rhodes, I think is one of the greatest comic book characters ever created. But DC has always been my number one simply because I just love the legacy idea. I love the idea that they have sidekicks and that the characters grow up. I mean, the fact that Dick Grayson grew up is such an astounding story possibility to me, and that makes me love that character. And I don't love, apples and oranges more than the other, but like if you made me choose, I'm going DC, and I'm going DC because I like the fact that their characters can grow. Whereas like Marvel is obsessed with this idea of like Captain America always woke up 10 years ago.
Right. Yes.
Or if he dies, he comes back to life. But that's okay. Lots of characters do that, I'm sure. Well, that's it. No, I'm not going to, you don't have to pick, of course. I mean, everyone can love what they want. And that's something we've talked about on this show a lot, is especially it seems like, and I don't know if this is lately or if it just was kind of in the shadows more and now it's come out more because of, situations in life, in politics and whatever. But it seems like fandom in general has become more divisive and more, I hate to use the word toxic, but kind of toxic. And so I would never presume to tell anybody what they should like or not like. And I think that people do that, or the people who do that are just, I don't know. I don't understand that. You can't like the thing that you like because I don't like it. It never made any sense to me,
I don't understand it either. And I think I kind of suspect that maybe that it was created by social media, which is the idea, especially Twitter, I think, because it's the idea of you only have 140 characters to get your opinion across. I think it leads to a lot of black and white, like red or blue, and no difference in between.
Yeah, you can type "this sucks" and that's a
short
it
takes up less characters.
Yeah, well, and it just seems like, especially with Facebook as well, people go way overboard with it. I mean, a friend of mine commented the other day that there, in an alternate universe, and way back when it used to be, if you saw something and you weren't a fan of it, you were like, well, you know what, I don't care for that, and you moved on. And now people spend like days and months railing against something, and it's like, for what? Or if you post something about, hey, I liked the latest episode of Star Trek Discovery, you're likely to have someone go on like a 10-page screed about how it isn't real Star Trek, and it's like, what? It's all made up. How is it not real anything? But it's weird. We have talked about it probably way too much on this podcast.
What's your opinion of Star Trek Discovery, AJ?
Love it or hate it.
Tell us now.
Yes.
No.
I like season 2 way better than season 1.
Well, that's our consensus, I think,
that's
too.
Fair.
We were talking about that the other day, too. I feel like they really kind of came into their own more, and I love Lorca as a character, and I love what they did with Jason Isaacs and everything, and the whole alternate universe thing. I think it was just cool.
I'll say this. I'm a huge Star Trek guy.
Yes.
Right.
And I think anybody that likes Star Trek or even Star Wars, there's certain like parts of the franchise or the universe that you don't like. And for me, I've never been a huge fan of the Klingons, and I've never been a huge fan of the Mirror Universe, and then that's what Discovery Season 1 decided to they were like, our whole season's about both these things, and like, so right from the gun, I kind of was like, but when they did Captain Pike, I was like, I like Captain Pike, yeah, let's go.
No, Pike was awesome. I can't wait for that show. That's going to be great. Hopefully they'll get it done quickly and we can watch it. I mean, safely, of course, but quickly, because I'd love to watch it. Anson Mount did an amazing job. But you talked about Twitter for a second. I've been following you on Twitter for a long time. Obviously, we've been following each other probably for a while, but I think you follow me anyway, but it's okay if you don't.
I'm pretty certain I do. Now you're going to make me double check.
I don't follow Chris on Twitter, but
that's okay. He hasn't talked to me enough. It's plenty. Once a week is plenty. But you've seemed. Normally, I will look at your tweets or whatever, and you seem more jovial and positive. But you seem like you've been kind of down lately. Is just shit finally getting to you? And by the way, you can swear on this show. We can say fuck even if you want to.
Yeah.
Is shit just finally getting you down, or because you're such a positive person, and I've seen you so many times going, oh, everything's great, and it's gonna be, this is gonna be a thing, and I'm just, maybe it's just because you're on the video and promoting or whatever, and you're doing such great work with your comics and everything, which we'll get to definitely. But just lately, you seem more down. Are you okay?
I am. See, that's so interesting because. One, anybody would be lying, especially any American right now, if you say you're totally okay.
Yeah.
Because we are past 6 months of this insane pandemic. Nobody can wear their damn mask. And I don't know whatever side of the issue you're on with that one. I just don't know how you're just not completely bothered by it. So I think that takes a toll. But actually, for a long time, I was very careful about presenting a positive face on social media. And a lot of that was because I was hosting on camera and I was doing this, doing a bunch of these other things on camera and podcasts and stuff like that. And I do believe one of the problems with social media is that people only want to follow the version that they think is you.
Yes.
And so obviously, like, they see me on camera, they think I'm a very positive guy, but that's not really a real person. That's just like a talky McTalkerson person.
Right.
And I've just lately, because I think, some of the issues facing, the world right now are pretty serious. So I've just been like, you know what, I'm cutting away the pretense and I'm going to be the real me. And a lot of people that talk to me in day to day, like, that is the real, like, I am pretty a jokey, like, kind of goofy guy, but like, I will call you on your bullshit real quick.
Good. Yes.
Well, I think I remember when I first noticed it. Actually, it wasn't as recently, but it was when people were giving your wife a hard time.
Oh yeah, I can't, like,
I don't want to say the claws came out, but you were not having it. You were not happy.
Oh man, I will tell you this. And I honestly, are either of you married?
Yes.
We both
Yep.
are. Yeah.
Okay. So you guys know as well as I do that, like, us men have no fucking clue what women deal with day to day until you get, like, in a serious relationship with one. Because the world was like, it was like the what I thought the world was scraped completely off, and I got to see it through her eyes, and I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, wow. And then when you double that down with social media, the messages that she gets on social media is fucking disgusting.
Yeah.
And it has blown me away. And so, like, that is where I have increased my idea of, like, I'm just tired of it, because I don't understand, as all fans of Star Trek here, and I love Star Trek and even superheroes, the ideal that most of them promote is just be kind to people. Like,
Yes.
It doesn't, a person is a person, be kind to them. And when you get on social media and you see how some people on social media treat women, you're just like, how are you not living by the ideals of Star Trek and Superman, this franchise that you say you love? Because, like, you're nowhere close. You're the villain.
Yeah. Well, someone pointed out to me once, and I don't remember who it was. It might have been Matt Robb, actually, but it's somebody else. Somebody told me, it's like, the villain is the hero of their own story. So
Yes.
they don't really
Yes.
necessarily think that they are bad guys. They're hypocrites, clearly. But I can't imagine. My wife doesn't work in show business at all. She has a totally different job, but she deals with a lot of males in her job too, and deals with a lot of shit in management, having to manage dudes, younger dudes especially. I cannot imagine someone like your wife, who not only is a woman, but also in comics and in this industry. I can't imagine how tough that must be. And you're doing the absolutely right thing, defending her. That's very good.
Well, I guess, thank you. And I guess I when you say I seem down, but that to me is I'm just like, I'm at the point where I'm like, no, I'm going to call you out for your bullshit, because that's what a superhero would do, and I don't want these cockroaches to exist anymore. And I do find that they all back off as soon as they have the finger pointed at them.
Oh yeah.
No one really wants to mess with you. You seem nice, but you could probably, crack a guy's skull if you really wanted to, right?
Well, that you can tell when I'm really mad. When I'm really truly upset or mad, that's when I'll pull out the thing of, "Hey, I'm a combat veteran, you assholes." Like a lot of people don't realize that about me, but I'm like, I've seen combat, you assholes, and like, look, I might not win in a fight if that's the way you're gonna go, like, but like, I'm gonna make you feel it before you take me down.
Yes.
Exactly. You go down swinging. I think you would win in a fight, to be honest. But
Well,
I think you're right. You'll find that most of these guys, these keyboard warriors, whatever,
Yeah.
are all just pussies. I worked at, and this is a totally sort of a related story, but I was a bartender and a bouncer a long time ago at bars and stuff when I was growing up, and invariably the drunk guy or the idiot will step back as soon as they know you're not going to take any more shit, because they're only brave when they don't think anybody's going to call them on it. But they will almost. I've never been in one fight like that. They just always backed off. I mean, maybe I was just lucky, but I'm also not small, which helps too. But I think you're absolutely right. I've noticed that people just go, oh, whatever, and then they, once in a while though they dig in, and then.
Well, I mean, I've never like hesitated to run my mouth, as Chris could probably attest to, and that's got me in plenty of trouble in the past.
That explains the podcast.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But I've also never been a particularly, violent person or quick to violence, and always try to avoid it. But you're kind of right. Getting married and especially having kids, it's like I will tackle someone who's 8 feet tall. I don't care if they come at my family, right? So it is kind of an interesting.
See, I can't even imagine how
dynamic.
that would change your perspective, kids.
Oh yeah,
it does. Kids. Yeah, I have one son. It was actually his birthday yesterday as we're recording this.
Oh, happy late birthday!
Yeah, thank you. I just threw that out there so you'd say that. But he's like, "Can I be on the show tonight?" I'm like, "No, you can't."
What'd you get him? I'm gonna put that out there.
Oh well. He's really into Skylanders, as I've discussed on the show many times.
Fun.
So we basically scoured the earth trying to find Skylanders figures, and now he's doing Pokemon. So we got Pokemon stuff. And
am I incorrect? Did Skylanders end? Did that video game go away? Is it hard to find Skylander stuff now?
There's one game that's still, I think, published, but there was a few other ones that stopped being published. Yeah, and so it's harder to find them. So my wife went to eBay and she went various places, and we found a shit ton of them, but it was not easy, and they were not super cheap. But luckily, a friend of hers actually had just gone through this with their kids a couple of years ago, and he had a bunch of them, so he just sent them over.
Nice.
Which I thought was
lucky.
super cool.
That's great.
Thank you, John. And so that was nice. But yeah, we got him that and some headphones. He wanted some gamer headphones. He wants to do YouTube and do videos and stuff like that, but he's only 7, so he's not going to do that shit yet.
Well, I'm going to pick your brain at this, because as a person who has done YouTube, and you've done YouTube as well, I believe.
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
No one wants to, trust me, no one wants to see my face. I have a great face for radio.
Same here.
Yeah.
If I had a kid and the kid, and I hear this more and more and more. If I had a kid that told me they wanted to do YouTube, I would do anything I could to convince them not to.
Yeah.
I'd be nope. I'd be like,
funny,
please, maybe dinosaurs, archaeology.
Well, that's why I said I'll just start a podcast with him, and he can review stuff or something.
Yeah, there you go.
It's just his voice. Well, my wife is very concerned about him being on YouTube and showing his face and everything for lots of different reasons that I won't get into, but she's been discouraging me from doing it, and I thought I could do it where he could just play and hear his voice and not have not show him necessarily. But he's too young, I think. But eventually I might try it. I mean, I started a channel for him just to sort of placate him a little bit, even though there's nothing on it. I said, well, your channel's live now, you can go look at it, but I haven't put any videos there. So I think I'm just trying to discourage him too. It's like I would discourage him probably from going into acting or any kind of facet of show business. Having spent so much time in show business, I would just say, be a doctor or something. We need more doctors. We need more engineers. We need more things. I mean, there's nothing wrong with show business, but it's tough on people, and it's definitely tough on kids. So I wouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, it's really tough. And YouTube's the same thing. It's like the biggest lesson I've learned about working in YouTube is that you can't count on YouTube. So it would just be, and show business is difficult enough, but YouTube is it's a level of difficulty that makes show business look easy.
Well, strangely enough, and I know you know this because you have a podcast too, Geek History Lesson, which we should definitely talk about.
Yeah.
But I found, and I don't know if you found this, but it seems like podcasts, which have also seen a huge resurgence because everyone is, or not resurgence, but a huge explosion because everyone's stuck at home and let's do a podcast. But it seems like you can monetize those. If you're talking about monetizing them, you can actually make a little bit more money from a podcast, although we haven't experienced that just yet. But we're working on it. But then YouTube, because YouTube can be demonetized and all these things can happen. And it seems like a harder game to get into than podcasting, although I could be totally wrong.
Well, it seems crazy because, the people that are doing game reviews are, that's the other thing, maybe because I'm too old. It's like my kids they'll buy a game and then they'll spend the next year watching YouTube videos of someone else playing it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why? We just spent $60 on this game. Why are you not playing it?
Some people make a good living.
They do, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing I've never that's where I'm going to show my age. I've never been young enough to enjoy watching somebody play through a video game unless I needed to figure out, like, I only watch those videos if I'm playing a video game and I can't figure something out.
Yes, that I see.
Then I'll watch those videos. But watching those videos just to watch those videos just reminds me of when I was in elementary school and my friends had Super Nintendo and I didn't have Super Nintendo, and they'd be like, watch me play Super Mario World, and I would just constantly be like, when can I play?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
That's funny. Yeah.
It's like, can I have
We
a
never
turn?
even had cable when I was a kid, so
Yeah.
I know. But yeah, I never got consoles. I never got anything. My parents were I guess it was good, but they were kind of, I don't know if conservative is the word in that respect. They weren't conservatives, but they were just like, oh, you don't need that stuff, and television will rot your brain, and you've already watched. It didn't help. I mean, I got a VCR and I would watch all kinds of movies and stuff like that, and just kind of submerge myself in that. And then Dungeons and Dragons was a big thing when I was a kid too, and now I've been playing it again, which is fun. Do you play any games like that, or do you do any board game stuff, or?
Not really. I'm getting into RPGs with a friend who knows it way better than I do, so he's gonna like DM a game for us. I like board games, but my wife doesn't. So it's very hard when the person you live with has no interest in them. So you're kind of like, hey, do you want to play? And she's like, no. And I'm like, ah.
It's like that line, Samuel Jackson's line from Pulp Fiction. It's like my wife's a vegetarian, so that pretty much makes me a vegetarian too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like,
shit, I couldn't remember Pulp Fiction. Boy, shit, man, what the hell?
Yeah, so it's one of those things. So I'm not really a board gamer. It's funny, like, talking about your video game systems. My parents were the same way. They would never buy me a video game system. And then my first job was for a furniture factory where I, like, literally sanded these table legs, these dining table legs, varnished them, put them in a box, and did that over and over and over for 3 months. But my first paycheck, I literally went to the Walmart and bought a Nintendo 64 with my first paycheck.
Nice.
Well, you earned it. It probably felt really good.
Oh, it was good, and it was all definitely. I guarantee you, I was the cocky kid being like, "Look what I bought."
Well, maybe that's funny. Maybe that didn't dawn on me when I was a kid. I didn't realize that I was supposed to earn that. My parents were trying to teach me a lesson, and I never got it, which explains a lot of my life now, I guess. Gosh, thanks, Mom and Dad. Shit.
See, they were right all this time.
They were right all along. Well, that's what I'm sure my son will say the same thing about me when I'm gone. He's like, "Oh, Dad, you were right all along. Shit, I should have listened to you." But, anyway, so you don't have any kids yet, Jason, right?
No.
I say yet. No.
I mean, we
Don't
have a cat
assume.
that my wife calls a kid.
Well, right, and you know what's funny? I'm also not one of those people who say, "Oh, everyone should have kids," because if I'm being perfectly honest, I was focused on career, I was focused on life stuff and whatever, and I never thought about kids, and I waited till I was much older. And I think it's actually better in some ways when you're older to have a kid, because you can A, afford it, maybe, and B, you can sort of give him more time. Because I do this show and I do a couple of things, but I'm basically at home now with him all the time, especially because of COVID, because he can't go to school. He's doing virtual school. So if I have any advice for parents or prospective parents, it's maybe, you don't have to have a kid at 15 or 20 or whatever. You can wait till you're, 35 or more. It doesn't matter. So,
all right.
Whenever it feels right, man, or never. If you don't want
it's
to.
not for everybody, really. I mean, seriously, it's, it isn't for everybody. Some people, that aren't built for it have them accidentally, and then some people realize that, the person I'm with, we don't want kids, and that's fine. It's totally nothing wrong with that.
The person you're with, you don't want to be with, is like, I want to have a kid with you. So,
well, there's that.
One thing it did for me, and again, this is not a parenting podcast, but one thing that it did for me was force me, for better or worse, to be more mature, because I'm very immature, and I always have been, and I've been very, I love games, I love comics, I love movies, I love nerdy, geeky shit. And I think in some way I've tried to stay a child as long as possible for various reasons, because I wanted to have my enthusiasm and love things like I do. And I was worried that, having a kid would make me too responsible and drive me down, whatever. But it turns out that having to be responsible for someone else besides yourself and think about someone else and put someone first, really, because they can't survive without you, it turns out that actually is a positive thing. Who knew?
Yeah.
And getting to experience all the shit that I loved as a kid with him for the first time is amazing. So that's a good thing about it.
Yeah, that's the thing I've always heard. I've always heard you kind of get to re-experience everything in your life through their eyes.
Yeah. Well, it
Now
turns
let me
out he
ask you
doesn't-
this: are you making him,
Making him.
or are you introducing him to nerd stuff? And what is his opinion of that? Because I've heard some stories from some other friends of ours that super inundated their friends, or their kids with nerdy stuff, and that was their kids' rebellion, was rebelling against all the nerdy stuff.
Yeah, I've tried to introduce him to a lot of things. He loves Star Wars. He loves Empire, which is his favorite Star Wars movie. Thank goodness.
Oh, he has good taste.
He has good taste. Yes, I was proud of that. But he did not. I tried to get him to watch OG Star Trek, and he was like, eh. So we might try Next Generation.
Oh, that's so interesting because
he didn't dig it.
he didn't dig OG Star Trek.
Yeah, like Kirk. He didn't
Okay,
like.
so I have a little brother, and there's quite a substantial gap between me and my little brother. There actually is a 17-year gap between me and my littlest brother.
Wow.
He is the happy accident, as we called. But when he was around, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, I introduced him to Star Trek, and he loved the original series and hated the Next Generation. And he loved the original series because, they would pull out their phasers and they would shoot lasers at each other, and there were weird aliens. And he didn't like the Next Generation because they talked all the time.
Especially in the first season, there was a lot of talking.
Yeah, I mean, my two boys had no choice because my wife and I are just tremendous nerds and geeks and into, a lot of different things, gaming, Star Trek. Doctor Who is my favorite show of all time. Thankfully, they both took to Doctor Who, but the interesting, I guess, divergence has been that, we've been, here's all the stuff we love, and some of the stuff they kind of liked, but they've gone off and found their own really nerdy things that, I mean, some of the things like Roblox and stuff like that, I would never understand because it's definitely well after my time. God, I sound so old, but it's been really cool seeing them just dive into. It's like, oh, I want all the Pokemon action figures, I want all the cards, and I want they kind of definitely inherited that kind of collection bug from me. So we, even if we're like, that's the dumbest thing on the planet, it's like, no, that's awesome, let's go get that, so we definitely have encouraged the nerd gene, and it's definitely took. So it'll be interesting when they're older to see what that develops into. So
That's great.
yeah.
I made the mistake of giving him an iPad, and that's just like, oh, bye, Dad. See ya.
Well, yeah, devices are a big thing in our house.
Yeah, it's crazy. I never had any of that stuff, as we said before, but it's like, I can't imagine what that's like, because you're just sitting there with basically everything. I mean, it's
At your
YouTube
fingertips.
Kids.
Yeah.
It's YouTube Kids, so it's not like he's watching anything dangerous, but he does watch a lot of videos of other people playing video games,
See?
which is the reason I brought it up before. He watched, these guys play Minecraft, and then he wanted to play Minecraft, and he watched people play Roblox. I'm like, no, we're not playing Roblox. That game is not for kids. And he just loves that stuff, and that's why I think he wanted to do YouTube. In fact, I know that's why. He's like, I want to be a YouTuber so I can do gaming stuff. So that was his impetus. But yeah, he didn't love. I showed him, what was the Star Trek episode I showed? I can't remember. I used to remember titles and stuff. It's the Doomsday Machine episode.
Oh yeah, Doomsday Machine. Yes,
I think it's called the Doomsday Machine.
It is.
I think it is, yeah. And he's like, who's that guy who's crying? I'm like, that's the other captain. He's very upset. It's Commander Decker or Commodore Decker. He's very sad because his crew is gone. He's like, where did they go? I'm like, well, they beamed down to a planet. It doesn't matter. And so he didn't love it. And I tried to show him a couple other episodes, and then we tried Next Generation. I don't know. He just didn't dig it. So I'll try again. He's only 7. I've got time. So
Yeah, you got plenty of time to convert him.
exactly.
The religion that is Star Trek.
Yes.
the brainwashing. Well, it's funny. We were talking about this before on a different episode, but people were like, "Oh, Star Wars or Star Trek." There's always that divide, or there seems to be that divide with people. And to me, I came into Star Trek first. Star Trek was always a constant when I was a kid. It was Kirk and Spock and McCoy. Everywhere we moved around, the show was always on, and I was very happy about that. It helped me deal with moving around so much. And so people say, which was more important to you? I'm like, well, they're both important. Star Wars helped me want to go into show business, and you can make a living. But Star Trek was my first sort of sci-fi TV show experience, and that kind of, I think I'll always have a special place for it. So obviously you love Star Trek. What was your Star Trek first experience with that?
Oh man, I have such a great story for this. So my first episode of anything Star Trek or even movie was Encounter at Farpoint, the pilot episode of The Next Generation. And the only reason we watched it was because they were doing the press up to the premiere episode, and it was like a story on all the local news. And so my parents, who were absolutely have no interest in sci-fi at all, were like, oh, they're making a big deal about this. Maybe we should watch this show. And on a Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on KSN NBC, the premiere of Encounter at Farpoint came on. And within 20 minutes, I was hooked. Because I was a real little kid when I saw it. And they were out. But from there, I watched every Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. I was watching Star Trek: The Next Generation and watched it all the way through Deep Space Nine and Voyager and all that stuff like that. And I was in like Flynn. For me, like, again, I was growing up on a small farm in the middle of nowhere, so being able to just expand my imagination that much with all these different, because the thing I love about Star Trek is that it's almost, especially the 90s Star Trek, they're almost anthology shows, because 1 week it's a humor episode, 1 week it's a horror episode,
yeah,
1 week
exactly.
it's a sci-fi. Like, you never know what you're going to get.
Right. No, that's true. And I think the thing I like about, well, obviously I have a soft spot for Kirk and Spock and everybody, because it was my first experience. But I found like the first season of Next Generation, it was a little tough for me because it was new and I had spent so much time with the original. And I was like, I don't know. Am I liking it? Who's this new guy? Jean-Luc Picard? What kind of name is that? It's weird. I like that record dude. He seems cool though. But and Tasha Yar, and there's a Klingon, and okay, it's all kind of weird stuff. But it totally grew on me. But you have to admit, I don't know, maybe you don't have to admit, but to me the first season's a little rough though.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah,
I mean,
it definitely found its footing. But
at the time, I loved it. But rewatching it, I think the first two seasons are, I would almost argue the first two seasons of every Star Trek show are a little rough.
Well, I mean, I guess the first two seasons of any show could be rough if you think about it, right? Because they're still trying to figure out their shit. But yeah, that's what but I stuck with it, and I was like, why is there a kid on the bridge? That's weird. So anyway.
But he could be me, because I was the same age as Wesley when I watched it, and I'm like, whoa,
true.
That's it. So I was like slightly.
And they let him drive.
I know. So I was disappointed.
Man.
I was actually disappointed. I know everybody hates Wesley, but I was disappointed when he left the show, because I'm like, that's me. That's my into the show, because I was exactly that same age. Well, when Will Wheaton left, but yeah, I'm like that. I could drive the Enterprise. That's awesome.
I have no problem with Wesley. I just always thought that they should have
done more with him.
Yeah, they should have done more with him. I would have liked to have seen him like grow a little bit. Like, I always thought, and I know you would have had to bend time or do something like. I always thought when he left the show for Starfleet Academy, they should have done exactly what they did with Nog on Deep Space Nine, where they should have just had him gone for like maybe 2 years, and then he comes right back and he's a field ensign and he's doing his last 2 years on the Enterprise again.
Yes.
Yeah, that was smart.
I mean, I always thought that was kind of. To me, that should have been the plan with him, is we would get to see over the course of the whole series, this guy go from, this kid go from being the kid on the ship to growing into, and showing us what it takes to be a Starfleet officer, right? So, yeah, that was definitely a missed opportunity, I thought.
That's kind of the reason why I think they did that with Nog in Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Is because I think there were, Ira Stephen Bear was on TNG, and a couple of the others, Ronald Moore was from TNG, and I think they were like, we're gonna do Wesley right. Here's our Wesley.
Yes.
Yeah. I bet you're right. I'm sure there was probably other reasons too. Maybe, I think Will has even talked about this before, is that he didn't, he was going through some times and whatever, and maybe didn't want to go on. Maybe the fandom was a problem for him, which I think it has been. So I don't want to speak for him, obviously, because
I mean, I can't imagine the hate mail he probably got in the early '90s.
Hate mail, yeah, well, that's what it was,
that's right. Yeah.
I'm gonna put that. You have to really be angry to write a letter and put a stamp on it.
I bet you people did, though. I bet you people wrote him like 10 pages of just pure drivel.
I'm sure that's true. It's so sad, though. He's such a nice guy too. It's so sad, but
he is a nice guy. I doubt he'll do it, but I would love for him to show up in like Picard season 2 or season 3.
That would be fantastic.
I mean, I'm sure you watch Picard, right? So
yes.
he was doing the after show, and I don't know. I kind of felt like when Patrick Stewart was on the last episode of the after show, they had some kind of a few moments where I bet, you know what, maybe it'll happen. I hope you're right. I hope it does.
I hope it does. I mean, I don't know whether he's not completely opposed to acting, because he's popped up in various. I know he was on The Big Bang Theory for a couple episodes. But I also don't know whether I don't know whether he might be opposed to the bad feelings of coming back to Star Trek, but yeah, he did the after show, so that tells me that he's obviously in contact with those production offices.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and Patrick Stewart was very complimentary, and all the people that were on from the show were like, "Oh, you're great," and So I feel like they still have a relationship, and I think that's possible. But you're right, maybe he's just not interested and doesn't want to deal with the shit. Because I bet there would be backlash even today.
Yeah.
People would be assholes about it. So. Like you were talking about before, like the whole Snyder, we've been talking about the Snyder Cut a lot. People are like pounding on things for months and months and months on the internet, and finally it happens. Do you think, because it's a DC thing, so I assume that you have some opinion about it, right? Are you into the Snyder Cut, or you don't give a shit? Or
Well, I'll tell you this. When they release it, I will watch it. Because I'm curious.
Yeah.
I am curious to see like how different is it actually. I'm very curious about that. And I'm also very curious of where are these extra 2 hours coming from. But I think that anybody out there is fooling themselves if they think the Snyder Cut is going to be the greatest superhero movie of all time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I still think Snyder's version of that movie is still going to be problematic and probably bad. I don't think it's going to save the movie at all. But I think it's an interesting thought experiment, and big applause for Zack Snyder for convincing Warner Brothers to pay him twice for the same movie.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Well, he didn't get to finish before, right? So
But I mean,
technically he owes them.
I assume he had to pay or play. Like, I assume he got paid, even though he didn't finish the movies. And I know he had family issues and stuff like that. But he's essentially getting to make the same movie twice.
That's true. So it's not a bad gig, I guess. Yeah,
Exactly.
You're absolutely right, though. I'm only doing it because of morbid curiosity at this point, because I want to see the train wreck that it probably will be. But you know what? I'm also trying to be optimistic too. In these times, especially, we're trying to bring more optimism to our show and to life in general. So maybe it'll be amazing.
You know
what?
I will say this: when I saw the trailer, I was very excited for Superman in the black suit.
Yes.
I was like, that
Yeah.
looks
That is pretty
cool.
Yeah.
Why didn't they do that in the original version? So I'm kind of hopeful that maybe there's some good Superman stuff in there. And also it seems like there's going to be a lot of cool cyborg stuff, which in the theatrical version of Justice League, I thought he was the most interesting character. So I'm very excited to see more of him.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll give him some more screen time, definitely, because he seems upset about how things went
Yes, he
down
does.
with
Exactly.
Sweden. So we don't need to get into that, but
Yep.
so we should definitely mention and talk about your comics that you did and you're doing. So you learned about your comics as a kid, and you read them when you were in service, and you kind of kept up with it, and that prompted you to want to write them, because that seems like a much bigger step than just reading them. And obviously, it is a bigger step. So what was the impetus for that? Why did you want to create these things?
You know, weirdly, I always wanted to write comic books. I always wanted to write television. That was always the goal. And for the longest time, I didn't think I could really do either one. It was actually my first year hosting DC All Access and like talking to all these comic book writers and sort of like picking their brains and figuring out how it works that like gave me the confidence to make and create the first Jupiter Jet with my wife.
Right. So it was her idea originally. I saw that you
So
mentioned that.
originally we were talking about writing some sort of all ages comic book, and we were having dinner in a diner, and she kind of blurted out, I've always wanted to write a character called Jupiter Jet. And for some reason, as soon as she said that, I immediately responded with, she's a redheaded 16-year-old girl with a jetpack flying in space.
Yeah.
Nice.
It just came from nowhere.
It's a great concept.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's just- and I love that her psychic, Chuck, right?
Yeah, yes, named for Chuck Yeager.
Chuck.
Oh,
Yeager. I was
yes.
going to ask. Okay.
Yep.
I was my guess. I didn't know, but that's good. Okay.
Yeah, all the names in Jupiter Jet are either references to science fiction or aeronautical, like pioneers.
Right.
Oh, that's fantastic.
So that one was a Kickstarter, yes?
Yes, yeah, both of them have actually been Kickstarters, yeah.
Okay. And the second one, the first one's available now. You can buy that pretty much anywhere, right?
Yeah, it's available everywhere. We have signed copies on my website at jasoninman.com/store.
Excellent. Excellent. And then the second one is coming soon.
Yes, it was just pushed back a couple of weeks, which happens in comic books, and I don't know. I'm certain there's some COVID complications with that, but right now it's November 10th of this year.
Okay, excellent. Excellent.
Fantastic.
Well, we don't want to keep you anymore. I mean, we've kept you quite a bit of time already, so I guess we could wrap it up probably.
Oh, sure, if you wish.
Well, I would talk to you all day. It's fun. But, I mean, I know you probably have other things
I
to do.
do have to ask the generic question.
Oh, Joe has one question.
I do have to ask, since, obviously you've been a fan of comics since you were young and all this stuff, what, and I'm assuming that these have obviously been for sale in comic book stores, what kind of reaction or how fast were you to get to a comic book store to see a comic book you created on the shelves? And what was that like?
So very fast. But actually, I have a great Comic-Con story about that. So when the first Jupiter Jet came out, issue 1 came out in September or October of 2017. I forget the exact month. But because we had finished the series in spring, we asked our publisher if we could do an advance printing and have an exclusive cover at San Diego Comic-Con.
Nice.
And they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so we got the issue there. We got Wonder Woman artist Nicola Scott to do a fantastic cover for us. It was so gorgeous. And I remember I was there a preview night, and I had to go film for DC. So I was stuck at the DC booth the entire time. And the entire time I was like, oh, God, I want to go over to that booth and go get that comic book. I want to go see that comic book. I want to go see that comic book. And my wife had gone to the booth and gotten the comic book. And I remember we had been filming for about an hour, and I looked down and I saw my wife, and she was like just holding it up and like shaking it. And then I asked my producer, I was like, we have to take a break. We have to take a break. And so like I ran down and I like held it in my hands, and I kid you not, like we both cried. Like we cried because it was just this idea that it was like birthed into reality. This thing was like real, and it was actually a comic book, was so transformative. And then it gets even better. The very next year, we got a table at Phoenix Comic-Con. And first day of Phoenix Comic-Con, I think it was a Thursday, we'd opened up 2 hours into the con, and this little girl walks up to us, and she's dressed as Jupiter Jet.
Perfect. Cosplay is the
she is our first cosplayer ever, and she literally, like, her name is Aspen. She lived in Phoenix, and she was like, I love Jupiter Jet. And she like, we were like, oh my God, we have to take a picture with you. This is amazing.
That is fantastic. That's, yeah.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I've never, no one's ever dressed up as any characters from any of the dumb movies I made or anything. So I can't imagine what that was like. That must be amazing.
Yeah, it was astounding. It's just, it's it's a thing, like, I think all creatives, and you guys know this as well, that like, even with the podcast and stuff, or your other films, just the fact that somebody says, "Oh, I like that thing that you made," it just kind of breaks your mind a little bit.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It does. Yeah, that's true. I remember one time I used to write for a bunch of different websites and stuff, and one time someone said, "Oh, you're Chris Ulrich. You wrote that thing." I'm like, Yes, I did. That's weird. That was like the first time I remember hearing that, when someone like quoted it back to me, which was very odd. But I experienced a little bit of that, I guess. But I can't imagine what it must be like to have someone come up wearing the costume from your comic. That's awesome.
Oh, it was insane. And then she told us as well, or her dad told us as well, actually, that when they were walking the floor, somebody stopped them before they got to our booth and was like, "Are you Jupiter Jet?"
There you go.
And so, like, to hear that story as well, that like she got the moment where somebody recognized who she was.
That's fantastic. Yes.
So it probably made her day too.
It probably made her day too.
And she got to meet you guys and your picture and the whole thing. So you have Jupiter Jet, and you have Jupiter Jet, the follow-up. You know what? I have my notes, and I totally...
It's Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, because...
That's it. I went to the wrong page.
I'm not a fan of things being called just number 2.
Yeah.
So I was very insistent that we needed like a subtitle, and we were very inspired by, of course, the Indiana Jones series.
Sure. As one is sometimes. Yes. So what's after that? What's next? Jupiter Jet and the Crystal Skull?
I don't know. I will say that in Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, we did this thing that I love in old classic comic books. The last page is a preview of Volume 3, which we have no timeline on when that's going to happen. But we've always said that for us, Jupiter Jet is 5 volumes, and so this is volume 2. So hopefully, readers, if you go out and buy it, that we get 3 more volumes, and then after that, hopefully in the beginning of next year, hopefully like January or February in 2021, I'm going to do a new Kickstarter for my first real deal superhero comic book, which I'm calling right now. I'm just calling it Project Best Friend. And it's kind of my take on my own Superman character, which I know a lot of people who have listened to my podcast or whatever, they're, and being from Kansas, they're always like, when are you going to do like your Superman comic book?
Well, when are you going to be Superman, man?
Yeah. Well, that's it. So
great. That sounds awesome. Well, hopefully you'll come back and talk about that when it's
I'd love
closer.
to.
Yeah.
That'd be cool. All right, so they can pre-order Jupiter Jet
and the Forgotten
Radio.
Forgotten Radio on your website or at Amazon too, right?
It's at Amazon, Target, Walmart, everywhere you can buy books, or your local comic book shop.
Awesome. I just heard a communicator in the
background.
Oh
yes, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Okay.
I thought my phone was on silent, but that's my text. That's my text sound.
Dude, that's perfectly fine. That fits in perfectly.
That is awesome. Yes.
Jason Inman, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys for having me. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much.
All right. Take care. Have a good. Be safe out there. I guess is what we say to everybody now.
Same to you guys. Well, I guess same to you in Portland and in Texas. I guess. Enjoy the rain or the you might have.
It's raining right now. Yeah, and
I'm so jealous of the rain.
Yeah, I hope it rains for you guys too. I hate to say that about LA, but
we're supposed to get some more here soon, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, fellas.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Find the Flickcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and pretty much anywhere else you can find podcasts. We're also on the Instagram and on the Twitters at TheFlickcast and on Facebook too. We've also launched a Patreon, so if you want to support us, feel free. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.